Bailey Ripley had loved Troy Hudson for 2 years. She thought she knew him until the night she opened the bedroom door and saw him tangled in the sheets with Scarlett. Scarlett, who had been her closest friend since college. Scarlett, who had once sworn they'd never keep secrets from each other. Their laughter was light, as if betrayal were normal. Bailey didn't scream. She didn't cry. She only stood there, silent, watching. A part of her had known, deep down, but she'd buried it beneath hope. That night ripped away the last layer of denial. Something inside her cracked clean through. She left without a word, drove until the gas tank ran dry, sat in the car with her hands on the wheel, the silence pressing in on her. The pain wasn't loud. It was sharp and exact, like glass splinters just beneath the skin. Even now it lived inside her like a bruise. She flinched when her thoughts lingered too long. Trust had never come easily, but after that night it was sealed away, buried behind steel walls and cold calculation. People told her to let it go, to move on. But moving on felt like pretending it hadn't happened, and she refused to erase herself just to make others comfortable. Bailey brushed her fingers through her hair and drew a long, steady breath. She had survived. That counted for something. The past still haunted her, but it no longer held her hostage. She turned from the mirror, grabbed her keys, and walked out the door. Today, she had plans of her own, plans that didn't include ghosts. Bailey redirected her life. She left behind the city, the apartment with too many memories, the constant pressure to bounce back. Instead, she answered an ad, a live-in childcare position, miles from everything she knew. The posting was simple: a single father, one child, full-time care. Room and board included. It wasn't just a job. It was a chance to start over. It didn't promise excitement, and that was the point. Bailey didn't want excitement. She wanted quiet, purpose. At the interview, Isaac Mitchell met her at the door of a weathered but welcoming farmhouse. He was in his early 40s, neatly dressed, carrying a kind of tiredness that mirrored her own. He led her through a modest kitchen into a living room where framed photos lined the mantel. From the staircase, a boy peeked at her, dark-eyed, cautious, before retreating like a shadow. They sat across from each other, no small talk, no polished pleasantries. Just two people whose grief lingered like extra weight in their bones. "I've looked at your resume," Isaac said. "You're overqualified. Educational development, a psychology degree. So why this?" Bailey didn't dress it up with excuses. She told him about Troy, about Scarlett, about the apartment she could no longer breathe in. She told him about her family, how they kept offering solutions instead of listening, how their looks said fragile when she was only tired of breaking. "I need to be needed," she finished softly, "by someone who actually wants me there. And I need space from everyone telling me to just move on." Isaac studied her quietly. Then after a long pause, he nodded. "My wife died 4 years ago. Complications from surgery. People said I should start dating again after a year. Get back out there, like grief has an expiration date." Bailey's throat tightened. "I know what that's like." This time he really looked at her. Not past her or through her, but directly into the quiet ache she had carried in. "I don't want a therapist," he said, "or someone trying to fix things. I just need a person who can reach Miles. He doesn't trust easily. Hasn't spoken much to anyone outside school. That makes 2 of us," Bailey said. A faint smile flickered across his face, the first glimmer of ease since she'd arrived. "You'd have your own room," Isaac continued. "Weekends mostly free. Miles is 8, smart, stubborn, quiet, like his dad. I'd like to meet him properly," Bailey said, "if he's okay with that." "He's shy," Isaac admitted. "It will take time, but he'll come around. What Miles needs most is someone who won't give up on him." Bailey started the job the following week. It wasn't glamorous. Early mornings, school drop-offs, figuring out how to cook meals. Miles wouldn't just push around with a fork, but it was steady, honest. And the farmhouse, with its creaks and silences, began to feel less like an ending and more like a pause. For the first time in years, Bailey didn't feel adrift. She felt useful, needed. And slowly, she began to realize she needed something in return. After a couple of weeks, she noticed the shift. It wasn't dramatic. Miles didn't suddenly run into her arms or chatter through dinner, but something subtle threaded its way in. He began leaving his sketchbook on the kitchen table when he finished drawing. Sometimes he'd push it toward her, his eyes flicking up for just a heartbeat before darting away again. At first, she wasn't sure what to make of it, but the pages told her everything his voice would not. Crayon rockets, trees with crooked branches, a figure that looked suspiciously like her, holding a red balloon. Another page showed a T-Rex with a crown, his favorite toy, which she had once found tucked carefully under his pillow. Through those drawings, Bailey learned his unspoken language. He liked macaroni and cheese, only the spiraled kind. He hated peas. His favorite game was hide and seek, especially when he could wedge himself into forbidden corners. He adored dinosaurs, space, and pretending a flashlight was his superhero power beam. He could talk. She knew that. He just didn't, not with her. But Bailey respected the silence. She never pressed him. Instead, she responded with quiet gestures, packing his favorite snacks, joining his games, leaving fresh paper and crayons without a word. One evening, as Bailey wiped down the counters, Isaac leaned against the doorway, watching her. "He's drawing more," he said at last. "And he's letting you see it. That's not nothing." Bailey glanced up, caught off guard by the gentleness in his voice. "He's warming up to you," Isaac continued. "That takes time with him. But I see it." Bailey only nodded, because she saw it too, and it meant more than she could say. A few days later, Isaac stepped into the kitchen, adjusting his jacket collar, keys in hand. "I need to head into the city for a meeting," he said. "It'll run late. I probably won't be back until after Miles is asleep." He paused, hesitating. "I already spoke with him, but bedtime might be rough. He doesn't handle changes in routine well." Bailey folded the dish towel over her arm. "If he needs you, I'll call. Otherwise, we'll be okay." Isaac gave her a grateful look, soft and unguarded, before leaving with a quiet goodbye. That evening, just after dinner, the wind picked up outside, howling through the trees like something alive. Clouds smothered the last of the daylight, and within minutes, a sudden gust knocked out the power. The farmhouse fell into darkness. A sharp crack split the air, followed by the heavy thud of a tree branch landing on the roof. Bailey's heart lurched. Before she could even reach for a flashlight, she heard hurried footsteps in the hallway. Miles appeared in the doorway, wide-eyed, his sketchbook clutched tight to his chest. He looked ready to throw himself into her arms, but stopped short, caught between fear and hesitation. Bailey offered him a calm smile and crouched low. "Hey," she said gently, "I've got an idea. Want to help me build the biggest, coziest blanket fort this house has ever seen?" Miles blinked, then gave the smallest nod. She handed him a flashlight, and together they gathered blankets, pillows, and chairs. In the living room, they worked side by side, building and rebuilding until their glowing hideout finally stood strong. Battery lanterns lit the inside, and Miles's soft giggles escaped every time their creation sagged and needed fixing. Inside the fort, they lay on their stomachs and made shadow puppets dance across the walls. Bailey showed him how to shape a dog, a rabbit, even a dinosaur. Eventually, Miles's eyelids grew heavy. He curled up close, his head resting against her arm. Bailey brushed a hand gently through his hair and began to hum, low and slow, a lullaby from her own childhood. She stayed there until his breathing steadied and sleep claimed him. For the first time, Miles had chosen her, not with words, but with trust. And Bailey held that gift close. Isaac didn't return until just after sunrise. The sky outside was pale gray, the storm finally spent. He stepped quietly through the door, expecting silence and stillness. Instead, the kitchen was alive with the scent of pancakes and the sound of laughter. Bailey stood at the stove, flipping golden rounds in a skillet while Miles, balanced on a chair, stirred batter with intense concentration. Isaac paused, stunned, not at the breakfast, but at the boy before him. Miles looked up, his whole face lighting when he saw his dad. He hopped off the chair, still clutching the batter-speckled spoon. "Hi, Dad. I missed you." Isaac dropped to his knees, catching him in a hug. "Hey, buddy. I missed you too." Words tumbled out of Miles in a rush. "The power went out last night, and Bailey and I made a tent fort in the living room. We did shadow puppets, and she taught me sign language, and she hummed a song until I fell asleep." Isaac's brows lifted, startled by how much his son had to say, and how easily he said it. But he didn't let the surprise show. Instead, he smiled like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Sounds like a pretty awesome night." Miles nodded proudly, then tilted his head. "How many pancakes do you want?" "Two's perfect," Isaac said, ruffling his son's hair. Later that day, after school, Bailey surprised Miles with a stop at the local ice cream shop. He'd earned an A on his math test, a big win, considering how much he'd struggled with word problems just weeks ago. Miles chose chocolate with sprinkles, grinning wide as he climbed into the booth with his cone. Bailey ordered a small vanilla and let him do most of the talking. He chatted about school, about solving the tricky question on the test, and how he couldn't wait to show his dad when they got home. A few minutes in, the sharp click of heels cut across the tiled floor. A woman approached their booth, her smile too bright, her curiosity sharper than her tone. "Is that Miles Mitchell?" she asked, leaning in. Miles froze, mid-lick, shoulders tense. Bailey looked up, calm and steady. "Yes, do you know him?" The woman's smile tightened. "I'm Tonya. I was good friends with Isaac's wife. We volunteered together at the library." Her gaze lingered on Miles, then shifted to Bailey. "And you are, Bailey? I help care for Miles." "Oh," Tonya said, sliding into the seat across from them without being asked. "So, a nanny?" "Something like that," Bailey replied, her tone polite but clipped. Tonya's eyes flicked between them, cataloging every glance and smile. "He seems very comfortable with you," she noted as Miles leaned into Bailey, humming while he worked on his cone. Bailey gave a small smile. "He's a great kid." Tonya nodded slowly, then stood, smoothing her skirt. She patted Miles on the head. "It was so nice running into you. I'll be sure to tell Isaac's family how well he's doing." By the time she stepped outside, Tonya already had her phone out, dialing. When Bailey and Miles finally returned home, the tail end of a tense conversation carried from Isaac's office. "No, we're fine. You don't need to come," Isaac said firmly. "Miles is doing great. We'll see you during the holidays. Take care." He hung up just as they stepped into the hallway. For a brief moment, his expression tightened, but by the time he turned around, he'd forced on a calm smile. "Hey, Dad," Miles called, running up with his backpack. "Look at my math paper. I got an A. We even went out for ice cream." Isaac crouched to give him a high five. "That's amazing, buddy. I'm proud of you." Grinning, Miles bolted down the hall, eager to tape the paper to his wall. Bailey lingered near the kitchen doorway, watching Isaac with quiet curiosity. "What's wrong?" she asked. He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "My mother. She wants to come for a visit." Bailey tilted her head. "And that's bad?" "She heard about you from Tonya, apparently. Now she thinks she needs to check in and make sure everything's fine." Bailey crossed her arms. "Why is that a problem?" Isaac gave a weary smile. "I told her I'd call if I ever felt overwhelmed. But I didn't hire you because I was falling apart. I needed someone consistent, someone I could trust with Miles while I work. My mom means well, but she's a force of nature. Once she's in, she doesn't stop. She'll take over everything." Bailey arched an eyebrow. "So, should I start packing?" Isaac looked at her, alarm flickering in his eyes. "No, please don't leave me here alone with her." Bailey burst into laughter, caught off guard by the seriousness in his tone. Isaac chuckled too, finally relaxing. "All right," she said, grinning. "I'll stay. But if she brings fruitcake, I'm out." That Saturday morning began like most others, calm and unhurried. Isaac, Bailey, and Miles sat around the kitchen table eating pancakes again, a new tradition that had taken root almost without notice. Miles was mid-laugh, syrup smeared on his cheek, when the front door creaked open. Bailey glanced toward the sound, confused. Isaac didn't move. Miles froze, fork hovering halfway to his mouth, and then she appeared. Susie Mitchell swept into the kitchen as if she owned it. Her posture was rigid, her eyes sharp, and her lips pressed tight in a way that made clear this wasn't a casual visit. She hadn't knocked. She hadn't said good morning. She simply entered, surveying the room as though she were inspecting an open house rather than stepping into her son's home. "Mother," Isaac said evenly, rising from his chair, his tone controlled. "You didn't mention you were coming." Susie offered him a smile that didn't quite touch her eyes. "Surprises are the best way to see how things really are." Miles slid carefully off his chair and crossed to her. She knelt to hug him, smoothing his hair. He hugged her back, but stiffly, his body tense. He didn't speak. Bailey caught the detail immediately. It was the same wary silence he'd once given her when trust was still uncertain. Bailey stepped forward, extending her hand. "I'm Bailey. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Mitchell." Susie barely glanced at her. She murmured, as if Bailey were part of the furniture. The chill was immediate. Isaac saw it too. "Mom," he said tightly, "can I speak with you in my office?" Susie blinked at his tone, but followed him without argument. They were gone nearly 15 minutes. When they returned, Susie's demeanor was polished and bright, her voice sugary. "Well," she said, her cheer too practiced, "I'm so glad Bailey is here to help with Miles. What a blessing you must be, dear." Bailey smiled politely, though her eyes flicked to Isaac. His look back said plainly, "I know." "I'm sorry." Miles stayed quiet, eyes on his plate, pushing his pancake in slow circles. Bailey sat beside him, nudging his shoulder lightly. "You okay?" He nodded, slipping his small hand under the table to squeeze hers. That was answer enough. After breakfast, Isaac grabbed his keys. "We're heading to the community center," he said casually. "They're working on the garden this morning." "We volunteered." Susie arched an eyebrow. "We?" "Yes," Isaac said, slipping a water bottle into his bag. "Me, Miles, and Bailey." Susie's gaze slid toward Bailey, her expression unreadable. "Oh, is Bailey going too?" Bailey smiled warmly. "I was the one who suggested it, actually. The garden's a great project, and I thought Miles would enjoy it." Susie's answering smile carried a thread of condescension. "Yes, of course. So sweet of you." Isaac's irritation sharpened. This time, he didn't bother to hide it. "We'll be back later." He set a hand on Miles's shoulder. "Let's go, bud." The community center garden buzzed with volunteers when they arrived. At first, Miles stuck close to Bailey, quiet and hesitant, but the rows of seedlings soon drew him out. Once his fingers sank into the soil, his whole face lit up. An older volunteer showed him how to plant tomatoes in neat rows, then cucumbers, then peppers. He was careful, focused, at ease in a way Bailey hadn't seen before. "Can we grow vegetables at home?" he asked her, brushing dirt from his palms. Bailey smiled. "Of course. You just need the right planter and a little space in the yard." Isaac, standing nearby, caught every word. "Then let's make it happen," he said, tugging off his gloves and tossing them into a bin. On the way home, they stopped at the hardware store. Isaac picked out a raised planter, bags of soil, and seed packets for every vegetable Miles had touched that morning. Back at the house, the three of them worked side by side in the backyard, sleeves rolled up, hands dirty, laughter drifting on the breeze. It was simple, peaceful, something that felt like family, and that's exactly what Susie Mitchell saw when she looked out the window. She stepped onto the back porch, arms crossed, watching. They were too comfortable, too connected. Miles glowed around Bailey and Isaac. Isaac looked content in a way she hadn't seen in years. Her mouth tightened. Bailey wasn't just a caregiver. She was becoming something more, and Susie Mitchell never liked surprises she couldn't control. She lingered a moment longer, then turned back inside, already planning her next move. That evening, after Bailey tucked Miles gently into bed and switched off the light, she came downstairs to find Susie waiting in the living room. She sat perched stiffly on the edge of the couch, a cup of tea untouched before her. The tension in the air was immediate. "Bailey," Susie said coolly, her voice clipped. "May I ask you something?" Bailey paused at the bottom of the stairs, sensing the storm beneath the words. "Of course. What exactly do you and my son do once Miles is asleep?" Bailey blinked, caught off guard. Excuse me? What are you implying? You seem very comfortable here, Susie said, eyes narrowing. With both of my boys, Bailey's arms folded across her chest. Are you suggesting Isaac and I are in a relationship? Susie's expression stayed unreadable. I'm saying it looks that way, and people are starting to talk. It's inappropriate. Bailey's voice stayed low but firm. I'm here for Miles, that's my role. If you have a problem with that, you'll need to take it up with Isaac. Susie's tone turned cold. I think you're taking advantage of them. Why else would someone like you be here? Bailey's jaw tightened. Someone like me? You know what I mean, Susie said flatly. A young black woman, overly familiar, living in a single father's home. Either an opportunist or something worse. Bailey stepped forward, her voice steel. So which is it, Susie? Are you condemning me for being a black educated woman, or are you calling me a gold digger? Either description would work, Susie replied without blinking. Before Bailey could answer, a voice thundered from the doorway. Stop! Stop it right now! Mother? Isaac stood there, pale with fury, fists clenched at his sides. Susie turned toward him, startled. Isaac, no! His voice was sharp, unyielding. There's nothing between Bailey and me. But if there were, it would be none of your damn business. You don't get to walk into my house and speak to her like that. Bailey is my guest. More than that, she's someone Miles trusts. Someone I trust, and you will apologize. I will not, Susie snapped. I'm your mother. I'm looking out for you and Miles. No, Isaac said firmly. What you're doing is projecting your fear and prejudice onto someone who has done nothing but care for my son and bring peace back into this house. Susie's voice trembled. You would kick me out? Yes, Isaac answered without hesitation. It's taken me years to get Miles to laugh again, to trust someone, to open up, and I will not let you destroy that with your suspicion and cruelty. Susie's face cracked slightly, her pride colliding with shock. But Isaac, you've never spoken to me like this before. Look at what she's doing to us. No, he cut in, voice like iron. Look at what you're doing. You crossed a line, and now you need to decide. Apologize or pack your things. The room went silent. Even the old floorboards seemed to hold their breath. After a long pause, Susie straightened stiffly. I'll leave in the morning, she said, her voice thin. She swept past them, head high, though her steps faltered as she reached the stairs. Isaac turned to Bailey, guilt flickering behind his eyes. I'm so sorry. The next morning, the house felt quieter than usual. A stillness hung in the air, heavier than silence. Susie moved with stiff purpose, her overnight bag in one hand, her lips drawn tight. She barely made eye contact with anyone. She found Miles in the living room, crouched on the rug, with his dinosaur figures lined up in a neat row. She bent down and hugged him gently. He hugged her back but didn't say a word. Goodbye, sweetheart, she murmured, brushing his hair back. Miles gave her a small wave as she walked out the door. He stood at the window, watching as she got into her car and drove off. The moment the car disappeared around the bend, he turned to his father. Dad? Yeah, buddy. I like when Grandma calls, Miles said quietly. But I hate when she visits. Is that wrong? Isaac exhaled slowly and knelt beside him. No, son. It's not wrong. I feel that way too. She can be a lot. She likes to control things, and that doesn't always feel good. Miles nodded thoughtfully, then padded into the kitchen, as if something in his young mind had settled. Bailey was already at the counter, pouring orange juice. You all right? She asked softly, her eyes flicking up to Isaac. He rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah, it's funny. She keeps telling me I should move on, but only if it's with someone she approves of. Like there's a checklist. Was your wife her standard? Bailey asked, arching a brow. Isaac let out a laugh. Not even close, Bailey smirked. So I guess your mom thought she had a second chance to pick the right woman for you. And I was in the way. Isaac looked at her, a slow grin forming. Well, she's not wrong, Bailey blinked. What do you mean? There's something here, he said simply. Between the three of us, we're becoming a family. It's happening slowly, yeah, but it's real. And I want to see where it goes. Bailey felt warmth rise up her neck, color blooming on her cheeks. You think so? I do, Isaac said. When Miles has news, good or bad. You're the first person he tells. Same with me. We look for you. You're the one we want to share things with every day. Bailey looked down, biting back a smile. Isaac stepped closer, his voice soft. Can I ask you something? Sure. How did you feel that morning last month when Miles and I went on that hike and you woke up to an empty house? Bailey laughed lightly, her voice unsteady. It was hard. I felt weirdly lonely, like something was missing. I couldn't wait for you two to come back. Isaac chuckled. Yeah, I figured. You cooked enough food for half the town. Bailey rolled her eyes, laughing. Okay, maybe I overdid it, he grinned. You're part of this, Bailey. Not just because we need you, but because we want you here. She met his eyes. The air between them charged with something new and unspoken. And for the first time, it didn't scare her. 2 months had passed since Susie Mitchell had packed her things and walked out the front door. In her absence, the house had settled into a rhythm, calmer, lighter. Miles was thriving. Isaac seemed more at ease. And Bailey had found something that felt dangerously close to home. So when a knock came at the door, one quiet Saturday afternoon, Bailey wasn't expecting to find Susie standing on the porch. Her posture was stiff as ever, but her expression carried something different this time. Not judgment, not control, something closer to humility. Bailey, Susie said, her voice steady. Is my son home? Bailey blinked, surprised. Yes, come in. She stepped aside, and Susie entered, glancing briefly around the familiar living room. Before Bailey could call for Isaac, he was already appearing from the hallway, his eyes narrowing when he saw who stood there. Mother, he said carefully, we haven't heard from you in 2 months. What are you doing here? Susie drew a deep breath. I came to apologize. To both of you. That stopped Isaac in his tracks. I got a call from Miles the other day, she continued. He talked to me for 15 minutes straight. He told me about school, the garden, and his new art project. He was excited, happy. He's never stayed on the phone with me longer than 3 minutes. Her gaze shifted to Bailey, softening. And I know that has everything to do with you. Bailey's expression remained steady, unreadable. I've had time to think, Susie said. I know I've been prejudiced, controlling, dismissive, and I see now how wrong I was. I want to work on that, if you'll let me. She hesitated, then added, and I know you two aren't in a relationship. This town's too small, people talk. I let gossip cloud my judgment. Bailey crossed her arms, studying her. You said a lot of hurtful things. I did, Susie admitted. And I'm not asking you to forget them, just maybe give me a chance to show I can do better. Isaac glanced at Bailey, then back at his mother. Well, he said slowly, this is a start. And for once, Susie didn't argue. Isaac's mouth curved in a small, almost sheepish smile. Well, Mom, you weren't completely wrong. Bailey's brow lifted. What's that supposed to mean? He turned to her, his voice low but steady. Bailey, will you go out with me tonight? On a real date. For a moment, Bailey just stared, stunned, her mouth falling open in disbelief. From the side, Susie gave a dramatic sigh. Darling, close your mouth before flies make it their home. Laughter broke the tension, Bailey's sharp and sudden, Isaac's low and relieved. Even Susie cracked a smile, and this time it felt genuine. Bailey shook her head, still catching her breath. That's something my mom would say. Just then, Miles came skidding around the corner, having caught enough to know what was happening. Say yes. Say yes, he shouted, bouncing with uncontainable energy. Bailey looked from Isaac to Miles and back again. She took a slow breath. Her heart was thudding hard, but not with fear, with fullness, with the weight of everything this strange, unexpected life had brought her. Yes, she said finally, a smile breaking across her face. I'll go out with you. Miles whooped like someone had just scored the winning goal. Isaac laughed, pulling his son into a quick hug, and even Susie nodded, a glimmer of respect flickering in her eyes. Well, Susie said, dusting off her hands, I suppose I'll keep my opinions to myself. For now, Bailey grinned. That's all we ask, and in that moment the room felt lighter, like something new had begun. Not just a date, not just a shift, but something that might actually last. After Isaac and Bailey left the house, Isaac in a crisp button-down, Bailey in a soft dress and a shy smile. Susie found herself alone with Miles for the first time in months. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional groan of the old floorboards. They sat at the kitchen table, a board game half set up between them. Though neither seemed eager to play, Susie folded her hands, choosing her words carefully. "Miles," she said softly, "can I ask you something?" He looked up from arranging his game pieces, curious but calm. "Okay, what do you really think about Bailey?" Miles tilted his head, surprised by the question. "I love her," Susie blinked. "You do?" He nodded, his expression solemn. "Yeah, why?" she asked gently. Miles didn't even hesitate. "Because she never treated me like I was broken. Or different. She never made me talk when I didn't want to. She didn't try to fix me. She just let me be me." A tightness gathered in Susie's chest, sharper than she expected. "And when I got scared the night the lights went out," Miles continued, "she hummed and rocked me like Mom used to. We talk about Mom a lot." Susie's throat tightened. "You do?" Miles nodded again. "Bailey said Mom will always be with me even if she's not here. She said I can talk to her any time I want, that she's listening, just not talking back. Just like I was doing before." Something pricked at Susie's heart, a slow, aching pressure she didn't know how to name. Miles glanced down at his small hands. "Someday I hope Bailey can be my mom too." Susie's breath caught. "Does Bailey know that?" He shook his head. "No, it's my dream. Just mine for now." Susie reached across the table and placed her hand gently over his. For the first time in a long while, she had no advice, no correction. Just the quiet weight of understanding, and maybe, finally, acceptance. Susie stayed through the rest of the week. To everyone's surprise, she genuinely tried. Not only with Isaac and Miles, but with Bailey as well. She asked thoughtful questions, helped in the kitchen, and even joined Bailey and Miles in the garden, digging her manicured nails into the soil without a word of complaint. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough. On the morning she was set to leave, Susie found Bailey alone on the back porch, sipping coffee in the soft early sun. She stepped out quietly, a travel bag slung over her shoulder. "Bailey," she said, her voice gentler than usual. Bailey looked up, wary but polite. "Hello." Susie paused beside her, then reached out and touched her arm lightly. "I just wanted to say thank you for taking care of my boys." Bailey smiled faintly. "It's not a job. They take care of me, too." "I know," Susie said, her gaze drifting toward the yard where Miles's vegetables pushed through the soil. "If things between you and Isaac are heading somewhere more. Serious, I want you to know you have my blessing." Bailey blinked, caught off guard. "Oh, that's kind of you." Susie nodded, her voice catching just a little. "They deserve happiness. Both of them. After everything they've lost, I've realized what matters most is that they feel safe and loved. And with you they do." She gave Bailey's arm a gentle squeeze, then turned and walked back inside. Later that afternoon, after Susie had gone, Isaac found Bailey in the living room, sorting through Miles's schoolwork. "What did she say?" he asked, curiosity flickering in his eyes. Bailey grinned. "She said she wants an invitation to our wedding." Isaac raised a brow. "Oh, really? And maybe to help with the planning," Bailey added. Laughing, Isaac leaned down and kissed her, slow, certain. From the other side of the room, Miles groaned dramatically and covered his face with both hands. "Ugh, kissing, yuck." They both burst into laughter, but when Bailey glanced back at Isaac, she knew, deep down, this wasn't just a happy ending. It was the beginning. The seasons shifted, and so did their lives. What began as a job, a way for Bailey to outrun the pain of her past, had quietly transformed into a home. Not just walls and rooms, but something sturdier, trust, healing, and the everyday rhythm of choosing each other. Isaac no longer carried his guarded silence. He smiled more. He laughed more. He reached for Bailey's hand without hesitation. And Miles, once quiet and withdrawn, now woke early to water his garden and filled their mornings with impossible questions about dinosaurs, stars, and whether love could grow like tomatoes. The three of them never became perfect. There were hard days, awkward dinners, unfinished conversations, doubts that crept in. But alongside those came growth, honesty, grace, and a love that didn't demand attention, but earned it. Eventually, Isaac proposed. One quiet afternoon in the garden Miles had helped build, dirt still on his jeans, Bailey's favorite flowers in his hand. She said yes. Miles was the first to shout, "Finally!" And the very next breath, "Can I be the best man?" At the wedding, Susie sat in the front row in pale lavender, holding back tears she never thought she'd shed for the woman she once doubted. Her toast spoke of new beginnings, the best kind of surprises, and strong women who love even stronger. They built a life together. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And sometimes when the night was quiet, Bailey sat in the yard with Miles, gazing at the stars. He told her stories about his mom, and Bailey would listen, hold his hand, and remind him as she always did. "She's still with you, just like I am." It wasn't the life she had planned. It was better. The end. Thank you for listening to Green Tea Tales. Help our channel grow. Like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment below.